So I've been with Jim's for around about 6 months, and on the regional franchisor for Auckland. So the role of the franchisor is to represent Jim's in the region we're in, and in this case it's the Auckland region. It's really to look after the franchisees and the interests of their businesses. So being a franchisor is a business in its own right. These guys don't work for us so much as have their own businesses, and the franchisor structure is just a framework that they can work within. So currently in Auckland we've got, it's fluid at the moment because we've got some guys coming, some guys going. It's growing slightly, so we're up around about 65 at the moment. So right at the moment everybody in the network is getting more leads than they can handle. So what is happening to a certain extent is that customers are calling in and we don't actually have anyone available, which is the reason why we're going through a bit of a growth phase at the moment. So I doubt whether there's a single franchisee should I say, in Auckland who isn't getting any work. They're getting plenty. Well, it's really hard to put an answer to that, but I would say above 65 within the next 2 years we could easily make that to 85. If we have that many franchisees in the system, we would still be seeing an excess of work, I would imagine. So if you see a Jim's Mowing van, it reinforces the message that we're out there. So I think the more franchisees that come in, the better for everybody, and it's actually good for the new guys coming in to understand that they're not crowding an already crowded space. There's actually plenty of room, and having all these billboards, these vans driving around is really good for everyone. Yeah, so there's an interesting story about that. When I first met Jim's, he was inquiring as to whether I'd been a lawn mowing guy who wanted to move up, and I told him a little bit about my business experience, and he said, well, that's really what we need. So I've been a businessman. I've had several businesses over a period of 30 years. The most recent one was a company I founded in 1994, which is a very long time ago. Became very big. We got up to about 50 staff at one point. We did spend a short time listed on the stock exchange, and we expanded through New Zealand, Australia, United States and Europe. So I've had a lot of experience with dealing with businesses generally, and the cycle is you market to customers, you find the customers, you look after them, and then you earn revenue from it. So the really simple cycle of business is something I'm very familiar with. And it doesn't matter whether it's a big publicly listed company or a startup in the lawn mowing business, the same rules, the same logic applies. Yeah, so my first introduction to Jim's was actually the guy that mows my own lawn, and I sort of got friendly with him. And then later on, independent of that, I decided to buy into the Jim's Auckland region. And so we got to know each other better, and he explained to me that he literally arrived in New Zealand 4 years ago. Low resources obviously, got into Jim's and has worked really hard. I know he works hard because he comes to my place quite late in the evening sometimes. And he was just telling me the other day that he's shifted his address. He's bought a house like 3 or 4 blocks away from where I live, and he's really happy, and he puts it all down to the income that he was getting from Jim's. So I think the guys that I'm enjoying the ride with the most are the ones who joined Jim's at a similar time to me. So they were coming in as franchisees at the same time I was coming in as a franchisor, and we've kind of learned the experience together. So I've got several guys scattered all over Auckland who've been with Jim's for a period of 6 months or less. And they seem to me, and when I ask them how they're going, they seem to be really happy with what's going on. A lot of them really happy with, firstly, the income, but secondly, the flexibility that this business gives them. Look after their kids, if they need some time to take their child to school or go to a school class production or something like that, it gives them the time. So yeah, a number of guys, probably 3 or 4 that started around about the same time as me, and we've been on this really interesting journey together. Well, one of the big things that everybody thinks is about all franchise businesses is that we somehow take a cut of your earnings. And Jim's doesn't work like that, so it's a flat fee. You pay the same as everybody else. When you start in the business, you're paying that flat fee. If you expanded your business, tripled your income, added some employees, you still pay the same flat fee. So it actually means that there's nobody standing on your shoulder saying, well, actually we're going to take a bit of that, which is a great model. So within Jim's we have a system called Pay for Work, and really what that is, it's a safety net for anybody starting gyms that guarantees a certain level of income per week over, really it's an extended period of time if you need it. And to be honest, in my time at gyms, I haven't actually had anybody that's come to me and said we need it, but it's there, it's the safety net. It gives you a baseline income. If for any reason you start with gyms and things aren't working well, you can rely on that Pay for Work guarantee. And it's a managed process as well, so they would work with us in terms of how do I get my business up, what do I do, and how do I take the step past the Pay for Work guarantee. Well, that's actually, for me, that's actually one of the key areas, because I see people in corporates just like me, people who have come from a job where you're stuck in an office, and you know in the office your health and your fitness suffers, so you actually have to do something else to keep fit for a start. And especially like these days when we've had sort of the lockdown, the stay at home, and now we're back in the offices, I actually do see a lot of people really interested in doing something that's outdoors, something that's active to keep them fit, something that's got flexibility, no boss, no corporate structure to deal with. And the framework of gyms isn't a corporate structure, it's actually just a framework you operate it within, it's supportive. So I see a lot of opportunity for people in the corporate sector to move on. You can match your income, you can exceed your income, but you create a whole lot more when you do it. I've got one particular guy who was telling me the other day, he's been in the business longer than me, so he's been there for a while. He actually only mows 4 days a week, and he has one day where he does quotes and does his own thing. So he's telling me that he earns more than he ever earned when he was in middle management. He's got 2 or 3 regions, areas around his territory that he concentrates on, and it's like one of them on Monday, one on Tuesday, and another one on Wednesday, Thursday, and then his day off. And he takes the day off as almost like a 3-day weekend. So he's come from a corporate environment where he would have been working really, really hard. Now he's getting the same income, and he's just using the skills he built as a corporate person, skills of management and communication, to refine his business to where it's a 4-day, really good earning business. If you move from being an independent mower to gyms, you have that brand awareness to rely on. I do expect that the population sees gyms as a premium brand. We would expect to pay more. When a gyms guy comes, you know that he's paid up with his insurance. You know there's a call centre behind him. There's somebody to call if he doesn't turn up. There's all of these advantages of being within the network. So I do actually believe people are prepared to pay more for all those elements of reliability. If you have an independent mower come to your house to mow your lawns and something goes wrong with him, you may never hear from him again. So at least with gyms, you know there's a reliability of the brand and everything that goes with it. Well, so we arrange them almost like packages at the moment. So the first thing that you can buy is the baseline package, which is you buy a territory, that's your turf, your patch, and there's a certain cost to that. And on top of that, there's a whole lot of extra things that we provide, which a big part of this is training. So the training takes a week. And the training isn't just training on how to mow a lawn, it's actually how to run a business, and the business happens to be lawn mowing. We then set you up for mowing with sign writing and branding your vehicle, and giving you the uniforms, the type of stationery you need, business cards and all those sort of things. So we actually create everything that you need to step out on your first day and start dealing with customers and doing the business. We've tiered it so that basically you can buy the basic territory only, which has no customers in it. You can then buy a territory and add customers. So if you buy, say, 30 or 35 customers as you purchase your gym's mowing business, that's enough to get you started. It's certainly not enough to run a full-time business on, but it gives people a medium or medium price to get into the business and start growing with. And then at a higher level, we've also got franchisees who, for one reason or another, are ready to sell their business and move on. And that's obviously it's a bigger purchase. So it's actually tiered from the startup level to that sort of medium level where you buy your clients, to just buying a ready, I call it ready-made, that's my term, a ready-made business where you literally walk in on day one, work with the existing owner, and his business starts becoming your business. So within the training, the first 3 days of training is literally about business, and so business is the full gambit from managing customers, which is a very big part of business, selling. Like Jim's gives you the leads, but you still need to turn up at a customer's door and sell to them, sell them that they should use you and take the price that you give them and give you a job. So we talk through all of the ways that you deal with customers to make sure that you're quoting correctly and getting that work. Then there's the ongoing customer support, making those customers not just customers but recurring fans of you. And then we go through things like how to manage your business, your paperwork, bookkeeping. Jim's doesn't actually manage your bookkeeping for you, but we actually give you everything you need to know to make that step to do it yourself. And then the training does then move on to how do I run a business out in the field, where I'm actually out quoting, mowing, how to use tools, how to use equipment, how to look after it. We touch topics like health and safety and making sure that we stay compliant within all of the tax rules and what have you. So yeah, the training is extremely comprehensive. It covers a lot more than you would expect. We're not, people don't line up on day one and start driving lawnmowers around. They do a lot of work which is purely about running a business. New Zealand, just like Australia, has a very high immigrant population, and they're coming from all parts of the world. What you find when that happens is that they're looking for opportunities to put down roots, to have a family, become established, and have a really good life. And this Jim's business is a really good place for so many immigrants to find that. And there's so many success stories with guys that have come in or families that have come in, and Jim's has been a way for them to get very settled, buy a house, become part of a community. What we've found within various communities, various immigrant populations, is that the good news spreads, and so we're getting a huge number of inquiries, just referrals at the moment, for people telling their friends and their family that they've had a great experience with Jim's and suggesting that they do it themselves. So basically your fees stay fixed. If you wanted to grow your mowing franchise into a mega business, employ staff, take on extra vehicles, Jim's will help you with all of that, but we won't actually take any more, the fees don't increase for that. The one exception is occasionally people say, I've got one territory, it's going really well, I want to buy another one, so they might pay fees for the second territory. But we're not penalising anybody for growing. In fact, we're encouraging them to grow. It's the same old theory. If you have one van, that's one Jim's Mowing van driving around the neighbourhood. If you had three, that's 3 billboards driving around the neighbourhood, and it's really good for the brand. So there's a guy in southwest Auckland, his name's Far. He's a really good guy who runs a really tight business. He has 3 territories. I don't actually know how many vehicles and how many staff he's got on the road, but he's continuing to grow. He still takes leads from Jim's. He's got a really nicely settled, mature business with 3 territories included in it. Okay, so splits is actually a thing that happens when a franchisee is building up their customer base. You get a lot of leads from Jim's, and these leads turn into customers, and over a period of time you'll actually get to the point you've got too many customers, and some of the customers may be difficult to get to places or just not really suitable for you. Most of the franchisees get to the point where that happens, and at that point we create what you call a split, which is just a number of their clients that they can package up and on-sell to somebody else. There's a huge amount of value in a split, because it might be 30 or 35 regular customers that a new franchisee in particular can just come in and buy, and there's a transaction that's done, those customers are moved over to them, and from day one they're actually providing income. So it's a split is basically excess clients in the system that we package up and then sell to somebody else via the other franchisees. The best people to talk to about that are the guys that actually were in Jim's, decided to do it on their own, lasted a relatively short period of time, and then called us up and say, I want to come back. I've got 3 people at the moment who are having that conversation with me, who the main reason they left was because they thought they could do it on their own. They thought that independence was great. With independence comes a whole lot of other work that they didn't realise they needed to do. Jim's provides a constant flow of work. If you're mowing on your own, you've got the people that you meet, the letterboxes you can stuff things in, a little bit of Facebook and Google marketing, and that's about it. So generally they find that getting new customers is very time consuming, it's expensive, and it's just not worth it. Well, the step change from what I was doing before to Jim's was huge. The business I had was more in the corporate environment, and I dealt with a few people, and I had designated managers in our client companies, and it was all very cosy and easy to manage. When I jumped into Jim's, suddenly there's 65 different people that I'm dealing with, and they're spread out over a big geographic area, so I have struggled a lot in the first 6 months just getting to know who everybody is, what their story is, what's going on with them in their relationship with Jim's, because I've jumped in at the deep end. Jim's is a business with a lot of moving parts, so you have to pay attention to all the moving parts, and that's hard. I figure that after 6 months I'm actually getting my head around most of it, got a handle of it. Now I'm starting to think about how I optimise my work and make it better, so feeling like I'm in a really good place in relation to that at the moment. Oh, it's just everything. I think anything that any of the franchisees have relating to their business, problems they might have with customers, problems they might have with dealing with the gym systems, you know, what do I do now? So everything, it's whatever issue they might have, they're going to ring me or text me or email me. And I think once again that's one of the advantages of Jim's, is that I may not know a lot of the stuff because I'm new, but at least I'm somebody to call and say what do I do about it, and then I'm the conduit back to Jim's to say what do we do about this. So yeah, I get it. I take and give a lot of calls in any given day, and a lot of text messages, a lot of emails. I think that was the step change in coming into the business. I didn't expect it to be quite that busy, but now I'm starting to understand it. And also now, when one of the franchisees rings up and I recognise the name, I now know a bit about them, a bit of their backstory. So it's actually much easier to have a conversation and understand where they're coming from. Okay, so within Jim's, it's called Jim's Mowing because that's where it came from. But Jim's is really a business that handles any exterior property services for anybody. So you know, it is mowing, it's hedge trimming, it's pruning. With the guys we saw today, they were doing a bit of landscaping, you know, not hugely adventurous landscaping, but just really nice small section landscaping is what they showed us. Gutter cleaning is a big one. You know, Auckland recently had terrible rain and suddenly we've got a flood of gutter cleaning queries. So Jim's is one of the services that the gardening guys do is gutter cleaning. And gardening, just general gardening. Auckland's environment, things grow most of the year round, and gardening is a really important role for around the house. And so we do a lot of gardening and weed spraying and all those sort of services as well. So yeah, I figure if you say it's on the outside of my house and it's got something to do with the plants or the landscape, Jim's has got a service, or the Jim's guys have got a service for that. I'm not actually aware too much of that thinking, but I could understand how people might see that, because I think, you know, this is the old story about somebody who says, well, I can get somebody to mow my lawn, the kid down the road will do it for 20 bucks, which is fine, but I think if you're running a genuine business, which these guys are, and you have a certain level of service and a job that you do, it's not just a cheap manual labour, it's actually part of the important part of keeping your house looking nice. So I think there might be a sort of a preconception that we're dealing with manual labour and it's low value, but it's not. It's quite the opposite. This is actually a high value service. So it's still petrol on the lawnmowers, and a growing trend now to go electric for all the hand tools. So the line trimmers, the hedge trimmers, all of those tools going electric. I think what we'll see is the franchisees start reinvesting in equipment, they'll be going electric. So electric's it's obviously quieter, it's better for the environment, but it's also better for the operators, so less vibration, easier on your hands, and if you're holding a hedge trimmer up close to your ears as you trim a hedge, you don't have a two-stroke blaring in your ear. So no, for a whole lot of reasons there's a trend now towards electric. What we'd really like to do in Auckland, and encourage it if anybody wants to do it, get somebody to go fully electric. so electric lawnmower and all of the electric hand tools. Well, generally what happens is they'll make an inquiry online or via the call centre, and we just have a quick chat on the phone. A lot of people drop out at that point because you explain to them this is a business and it is going to be hard work, but if you work hard it's going to be money. So it's like an honest discussion on the phone. You don't really want to sell anybody something they don't want. And the next step then we meet up. So meetings for me is a big thing. I tend to chase around a lot because we're dealing with people who might be working, and I'll often meet up after work and just say let's go and have a coffee or maybe a Coca-Cola at a bar somewhere, and we'll just talk it through weekends. So there are a lot of one-on-one meetings after we've gone through that phone call part of the process. At that point, generally what I'm finding is people get very interested once they see the commercial details and they see how easy it is to actually get going. And we lay it out to them in this meeting that we have, and then from that point on they'll tell me, and so far since I've been part of Jim's, once people have gone to the meeting, the majority of them are showing a really strong interest and wanting to move into the paperwork stage where we just sign them up, go through the legal process of becoming a franchisee. When there's a real imperative, and with some of the people we speak to, they really want to get going, I would say it's a month. You could feasibly do it in 3 weeks. It is actually possible, but that would be extreme. So I would say a month to 6 weeks from when you first talk to me to when you're actually out there mowing is quite a reasonable period of time to expect. And I've got other people who've been talking to me for 6 months now. So it's up to you. If you're a prospective franchisee, it's really up to you. And I do have people saying to me, I want to get going as fast as I can. And I'll tell them it's a 3 to 4 week process at best, and they're kind of disappointed. Whereas other people want to hold back and think about it for a while. So yeah, that's the time frame. It's variable, but there are ways to get into the business really fast if that's important to you. So the meetings we're doing here in Auckland sort of happen on multiple levels, and I really encourage the mowers themselves to maintain their own contacts within the Jim's group. So Auckland, from top to bottom and left to right, or east to west, is like 80 kilometres. It's a really big city. So the first thing that I do encourage the guys is to meet up with other franchisees, and quite often with a new guy, I give them a list of phone numbers and say, call up these boys and they'll talk to you. So they're not meetings as such, but we actually do encourage that community, and it's very helpful. And what I'm finding is that the existing guys are extremely helpful to the new guys. Happy to give them their time, happy to meet up at a cafe somewhere in the local area and have a chat. So we encourage that. At a more formal level, we have once every month, every 6 weeks. It's sort of flexible depending on what's going on in the city. We have a formal meeting where everybody is invited in, and we generally run through topics. So normally what I talk about at the meetings is, like a bit of a seasonal update, like where are we at with the season, how's business going, what's the effect of the weather, for instance, Auckland having on you. And then we talk about business issues, planning ahead, all those sort of things. What I note in our meetings is there's several guys, some of the longer standing franchisees really like standing up and talking and telling the more recent ones a little bit about their life and their experiences. So I really, really like that way the meetings work. Generally then we sort of have a little bit of an education thing. We actually talk about things, and most recently there are a couple of topics we've talked a lot about is investing in electric. It's a big part of Jim's is moving to electric. So we talked about the benefits and the reasons why you would invest in electric in a recent meeting. And then quite recently we talked about employing staff, because so many of our franchisees, they want to employ staff. And there was a bit of a challenge there, a number of challenges. So we had a meeting about that. And as a result of the meeting, we put together a Google Drive with information for franchisees who want to recruit staff. If they've got friends coming in from overseas, then there's an immigration process, so more information about that as well. Well, your community and your networks are probably one of the best sources you can find staff. The local auction site, Trade Me, has a jobs board in it as well. That's also very good. So the online sites are good. what you do find when you advertise on those is a very high level of applicants and a lot of sifting through, a lot of work. So I do encourage people to actually think about their own personal network. The next thing about recruiting staff, I think, is not so much finding people, finding applicants, is actually sorting through them. Once again, that's where we can help, because if somebody isn't sure about evaluating personnel, they can just give me a call, give us a call, and we'll help them through with that. So I think at the moment in New Zealand, one of the most important features or factors in recruiting staff is that our borders have opened up after about 3 years of lockdown and various immigration restrictions. There's a lot of people coming in from overseas, and you can employ people from overseas. You can put them on a work permit, but you need to go through a government certification program, and that's something I've been helping multiple franchisees with to get that right. One of the most important things you do when you're employing staff, whether you come locally or whether they come from overseas, is getting your compliance right, following the rules, making sure that they're set up properly, making sure that you're not breaking any rules. It's bad for you, but bad for the brand. So a lot of support around compliance. Now I have everybody who I have at the meetings, when I talk to them, they ask me that question: what happens if I get sick? And the honest answer is that Jim's doesn't have a bunch of freelancers running around ready to support you when that happens, so it can be challenging. What we do have though is a bunch of very supportive franchisees who generally, whenever this has happened, step in and offer to help. We have instance at Christmas time where one of our guys broke his leg, broke it badly enough that he was going to be out of action for a long time, and two of the franchisees nearby him offered to come and help out. And this guy, had to deal with the issue himself personally. It's his own business. If he was an independent mower, I don't know what he would have done. Probably called everybody and said, I just have to stop. But at least with this chap, he had some support from the network. The three things on everybody's mind, I think, when they join gyms is, am I taking a risk that's going to pay off? Will I make enough money? And I always say, as long as you do everything the right way, follow our instructions, yes you will. The next one they always ask me is, will I get enough work? And I can always answer that saying there's plenty of work if you want it. Whether you keep those clients and continue to work with them, that's up to you. The third one is all about the commercials. So, how much is Jim's going to take out of this? And that's, once again, an easy question. There's a flat fee. It's fixed regardless of how much you earn. And then if you don't earn enough, you do come and talk to us about your income, because we've got the pay for work guarantee. So I think they're the crux of the questions. Well, the gyms system, it's really interesting because it's grown up over a long period of time. It's not something new that was developed by a bunch of clever people who designed a system. You can see it when you use the gym system, that it actually grew organically. It's got a huge amount of reporting capability, so there's reports for just about everything that moves in gyms. That's really satisfying, because that's where a lot of systems let you down, is they don't give you the information you need. The modern interfaces that gyms are working on at the moment are potentially not up to the same level that you might see if you're looking at these modern newly built apps. But what I do know is that gyms is working on that front end of their business a lot. So as a person who comes from a digital world, what I can see is a very robust and very well thought out back end, and that presentation layer may not be as flash as what a lot of people see in the market. But I don't value that flashiness, that flashiness, as much as I value what the system can actually do when you ask something of it. Talking from a systems point of view, just for a second, gyms has a lot of data. It's got the franchisees, it's got the clients, it's got the jobs, it's got lots of data in there. Everybody actually gets a different view of that same data, but it's all the same data, which is very cool. So if I look for some information through my interface and a franchisee looks at it through their interface, we actually see the same data. It's just presented differently. And so that's how it works, is so a franchisee is given some tool, so given the Gyms Online and the Gyms app, That's how they can manage their work on a day-to-day basis, and how they control what work they get, when they get it, all those sort of things. It's got a lot of tools in there for scheduling and invoicing. They don't necessarily have to use all that stuff, but that's all there. So as well as that, you've got some back-end operations going on, like email and like text messaging. So whenever a lead comes in, the server will send you your lead in your app to your online, the gyms online, and then also by text message and by email. Almost impossible to miss the fact that you've got a lead. So these are the things that I think are very comprehensive about gyms, as the way that that data is actually managed. Gyms is a real person. I have met Jim, and the interesting thing about gyms is he's central to the business. So I've met lots of CEOs in my time, and I've always found that the best CEOs are the ones that are totally in touch with their business. And I've met some really stunning CEOs in my life, and Jim's is right up there. Jim is as a CEO, he has a complete handle on the business. He's made himself central to it. I think it's really quite impressive. So yeah, Jim's is a real person. He's an incredibly busy man. I don't know how he actually does his job, but he is a real guy. And when you go on training, if you go to Australia, you'll get to meet Jim. And if you want to check Jim out, there's so much video where Jim talks about his business, and he talks about how it runs. Because when I say gyms is central to the business, what's most important to the gyms, what's most important to Jim is the customer. And so if a customer has a complaint, it doesn't go into some sort of bucket somewhere and picked up by somebody at some point to handle. It actually goes to Jim. And then he has a system that he manages personally, which is how do we deal with the complaint? What are the things we have to do to unpack this and make sure that the customer's happy again? So that's really where Jim sees his role in the business, is that central point of managing customer expectation, managing their responses, their complaints, and their kudos when it comes through, and also dealing with it so that the Jim's brand is protected. I think that would almost appear to be Jim's #1 job, is maintaining that relationship with the customers at a complaints level to make sure that's minimised. So if, depending on what the complaint is, because you know we're dealing with people, franchisees and clients, and complaints are just right across the park in terms of what happens. But the one thing that will happen is somebody's got a complaint, they ring the number, they ring the 0800 number and they talk to a real person. Then the person who at the other end of the complaint, the franchisee, they have an obligation to do something about it, and then that's managed. And I'm also involved, so I'm notified that there is a complaint, and there's a responsibility on me to make sure that that complaint is sorted out. Now sometimes the complaints are valid, and we just have to say that was a complaint, it's sorted out. What we then do with the customer is say, what can we do now? We need to sort this out. Sometimes it's not possible. I've said we don't want to use you, we're going for someone else. I think that's probably the last thing anybody in gyms wants to hear. So we're actually trying to make sure that that conversation never happens. So right from the early day of a complaint, we're very proactive and we're onto it. If a customer rings Jim, they should expect that the franchisee will call them straight away, that they'll turn up and give a quote within the time frame that they set, that they give a quote that's reasonable, and then if the customer then says, I'm happy with the quote, come and do the job, that they turn up. These are all the things that people complain that tradespeople don't do. So it's just really simple stuff. And then go to the job, do a good job, ask the customer if you're happy with the job, and then effectively, sign it off. There shouldn't be any complaint at the end of the process, but if there is, that's when we step in and say, what do we do now? Yeah, so Auckland has an extended growing season. It really only has 2 months during the year where things don't grow and people don't head out to the garden too much, and that would be July and August, and even during July and August there's still stuff to do. But Auckland is a city of big properties, big grassy properties with lots of gardens, and a huge amount of attention paid to the gardens. So if you combine the large garden areas with a warm, humid climate, you're going to get a very lush and green city, and that's what we've got.
Do your guys, some of them do horticulture courses, or do they upskill in regards to horticulture or anything like that?
No, not a lot. I know there's some talk about it with multiple guys. Probably something in the future for us to deal with is actually trying to upskill, because the franchisees do like challenging themselves, they do like doing bigger jobs, and so there are the training courses available. We haven't really formalised anything yet around that. So if you're interested in working with gyms and building your own business within the gyms network, I would absolutely encourage that you give us a call. You call us on our 0800 number, or you go to www.gymsmowing.co.nz. It costs nothing to inquire, there's no expectation placed on you, and we are happy to talk.